My friends, to browse these episodes is not merely to collect information but to enter into dialogue with your own unconscious. In each story of breaking free from self-limitation, you will find a mirror reflecting your inner struggle. What you call being stuck is often the psyche's way of demanding transformation. Let us journey together through 10 keynotes toward liberation, as self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotage are rarely random acts of weakness or personal defects. They are the whisperings of the shadow, those parts of your psyche that you have pushed away, denied, or judged as unacceptable. When you feel yourself hesitating to act, undermining your own progress, or repeating destructive cycles, it is not a sign of hopelessness, but a signal from the unconscious asking to be seen. The shadow holds both your deepest wounds and your greatest unclaimed strengths. By recognizing its presence, you begin to loosen its grip. This recognition requires honesty, courage, and compassion. Honesty to admit what is hidden, courage to face it directly, and compassion to understand that these hidden parts formed for a reason, often as a way to protect you in earlier stages of life. As you turn toward the shadow with curiosity instead of fear, you discover that within every self-limiting belief lies a fragment of truth that can be reclaimed and transformed. Integration of these parts does not erase your flaws but weaves them into a fuller, more resilient identity, allowing you to move beyond the paralysis of sabotage and into the flow of conscious choice. Every challenge you face, every setback, every pattern of self-sabotage, every belief that keeps you small, is not simply an obstacle to overcome but a symbol carrying a message from your unconscious. In Jungian terms, life is speaking to you in the language of symbols, a language older and deeper than words. When you repeatedly feel blocked in the same area, when you sabotage your own progress, or when a certain fear rises again and again, it is not coincidence. It is the psyche presenting you with an image, a pattern, a living metaphor for something unresolved within you. By learning to interpret these symbols, whether they appear in your dreams, your relationships, your impulses, or your failures, you begin to unlock the hidden meaning behind your struggles. This act of interpretation shifts you from victimhood to authorship, from confusion to clarity. You may discover that a failed project is symbolizing a need for authentic expression, or that constant procrastination symbolizes a deeper fear of being seen. When you honor these signs, you turn frustration into dialogue and resistance into revelation. The language of symbols allows you to transcend the literal, to see your life as a living myth in which every obstacle holds a key to your liberation. As you refine your ability to listen, to decode, and to trust what these symbols are showing you, you reclaim power over patterns that once seemed invisible and unchangeable, and you begin to navigate your inner landscape with wisdom and purpose. To move beyond self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotage, you must first acknowledge that inner conflict is not a flaw but a natural condition of the human psyche. Within you live opposing desires, beliefs, and instincts. One part longing for freedom, another clinging to safety, one part craving expression, another fearing judgment. These tensions can feel unbearable, yet they are the very crucible in which transformation occurs. In Jungian terms, it is the tension of opposites that gives birth to a new synthesis, a more integrated self. When you deny or repress one side of the conflict, you do not eliminate it, you merely push it into the unconscious, where it gains strength and influences your behavior in hidden ways. Accepting your inner conflict means allowing both sides to exist in your awareness without rushing to resolve or judge them. It is an act of patience and presence, sitting with your fear and your courage, your doubt and your faith, your longing and your restraint. This acceptance does not paralyze you, rather, it opens a space where a third way can emerge, an insight, a new behavior, or a reconciled perspective that transcends the old opposition. By practicing this, you discover that the war inside you is actually a dialogue waiting to unfold. Each conflicting part carries valuable information about your needs, boundaries, and potential. The moment you stop treating your inner conflict as an enemy and start treating it as a teacher, the stuck energy begins to flow, and you become capable of making conscious choices rather than reacting from old patterns. Over time, this practice of acceptance transforms chaos into coherence, giving you the freedom to act from your whole self rather than from fragmented impulses. Many of the beliefs that keep you small and confined did not originate with you. They were passed down, often invisibly, through family systems, cultural expectations, educational institutions, and social conditioning. These inherited narratives whisper in the back of your mind, shaping your perception of what is possible, acceptable, or worthy. They can sound like unquestioned truths. I'm not good enough. People like me don't succeed. Security is more important than fulfillment. Or I must not disappoint others. In Jungian terms, these are collective patterns, archetypal stories embedded in the cultural unconscious, operating through you without your consent. To move beyond self-sabotage, you must first become aware of these inherited scripts and ask yourself, whose voice am I hearing right now? When you recognize that many of your limiting beliefs are echoes of someone else's fears, traumas, or worldview, you gain the power to disentangle yourself from them. Questioning inherited narratives does not mean rejecting your past or blaming those who shaped you. Rather, it means seeing their influence clearly so you can choose consciously what to keep and what to release. This questioning is an act of inner sovereignty. It allows you to claim authorship of your own story and to write a narrative aligned with your authentic self, rather than with outdated expectations. As you dismantle these unconscious agreements, you create a fertile space for new beliefs and possibilities to emerge. Beliefs born of your direct experience, your intuition, and your deeper calling. Over time, this practice transforms your relationship with yourself and the world, replacing automatic self-sabotage with deliberate self-creation. In doing so, you not only free yourself but also stop the transmission of limiting narratives to those who come after you, becoming a conscious link in the evolution of your lineage and culture. Deep within every individual resides the archetype of the hero, an enduring image of the one who ventures into the unknown, confronts danger, and returns transformed with new wisdom. This hero is not a distant mythic figure. It is a living potential within your psyche that awakens whenever you step toward growth despite fear. In the face of self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotage, the hero archetype becomes your inner ally, reminding you that you are more than your conditioning, more than your doubts, more than your past mistakes. Encountering the hero within is less about force and conquest and more about courage, integration, and conscious choice. It is about saying yes to the difficult task of self-examination, about taking responsibility for your life rather than waiting for rescue. When you call upon this archetype, you draw strength from countless stories of transformation. The hero faces dragons, yet those dragons are often symbols of inner fears, old traumas, and the hidden shadow. By standing your ground and entering into dialogue with these fears, you reclaim the power locked within them. This journey is not linear. There will be false starts, setbacks, and nights of doubt. Yet each act of courage, however small, builds the musculature of your soul. As you repeatedly choose to confront rather than avoid, the hero within you grows stronger, more resilient, and more integrated with the rest of your personality. This archetypal energy does not demand perfection, it asks for persistence and sincerity. The hero understands that real progress arises from self-awareness combined with action. Small steps taken steadily, guided by an inner sense of purpose. As you embody this energy, you stop seeing challenges as punishments and start experiencing them as initiations, invitations to deepen and expand your sense of self. Over time, your relationship with the hero archetype becomes a source of profound inner guidance. It leads you back, again and again, to your own courage, your own agency, and your own unfolding destiny. In embracing the hero within, you transform self-sabotage from a barrier into a doorway, stepping into a fuller, freer, and more authentic life. Much of the pain of self-sabotage arises not from the challenges themselves but from the battles we wage inside our own minds. One part of you longs to grow, to take bold steps, to risk. Another part pulls back, criticizes, or sabotages. If you treat these conflicting voices as enemies, you intensify the war and feed the very patterns you're trying to transcend. Jung taught that what we resist persists, and what we accept can be transformed. Cultivating inner dialogue means moving away from the instinct to crush, silence, or exile parts of yourself and instead creating a safe internal space where those parts can speak and be heard. Begin by noticing the tone of your self-talk. When you fail or falter, do you berate yourself, or do you listen with curiosity to the part of you that hesitated? Often, self-sabotaging behaviors are misguided attempts at protection. Old strategies formed when you were vulnerable and lacked resources. By dialoguing with these inner voices, through journaling, meditating, visualization, or simply mindful listening, you can uncover the fears and unmet needs they carry. This transforms the inner critic from a tyrant into a messenger, revealing the deeper wounds or lessons beneath your resistance. As you develop this practice, a profound shift occurs. Instead of feeling fragmented and at war with yourself, you begin to experience a sense of internal wholeness. Compassion becomes your primary tool. You start asking, what is this part trying to achieve for me? Rather than, how do I get rid of it? Over time, this inner dialogue builds trust within your psyche. Fearful parts relax because they are acknowledged rather than shamed. Courageous parts feel supported because they are not forced to carry the whole burden alone. The energy once spent on internal conflict becomes available for creativity, risk-taking, and authentic living. This is not a passive process but an active cultivation of self-leadership. You become the mediator, the integrator, the wise adult within who holds space for all your inner voices. In doing so, you transform an inner battlefield into an inner council, a living democracy of the soul where each voice is honored but none dominates. When inner dialogue replaces inner war, you reclaim your agency, your energy, and your capacity to move forward free from the sabotage of internal division. Active imagination is one of the most profound methods Jung developed for bridging the gap between the conscious mind and the unconscious, and it can be a powerful antidote to the stuckness of self-sabotage. When you are caught in repetitive patterns, it is often because large portions of your psychic energy are bound up in unexpressed feelings, unresolved conflicts, or neglected aspects of yourself. This energy cannot be released by logic alone. It must be engaged creatively, symbolically, and emotionally. Active imagination gives you a direct way to do this. In practice, it means entering into a deliberate dialogue with the images, sensations, or inner figures that arise from your unconscious. You might sit quietly, close your eyes, and focus on a troubling emotion, a recurring dream image, or a self-sabotaging impulse. Instead of analyzing it intellectually, you allow it to speak, to show itself, to act out its story. You can write its dialogue in a journal, paint it, move as it would move, or simply imagine a conversation between you and the image. In doing so, you treat the unconscious not as a passive storehouse, but as a living, dynamic partner in your growth. As you continue this practice, you will notice that the figures you meet, whether they appear as inner critics, fearful children, archetypal guides, or shadowy antagonists, often carry gifts or insights hidden beneath their surface. A critic may reveal a legitimate need for boundaries. A fearful child may show you where you need reassurance and self-care. A dark figure may hold the courage or creativity you have not yet claimed. By allowing these parts to speak, you liberate the psychic energy trapped in repression and self-limiting beliefs. This liberated energy naturally flows back into your life as vitality, motivation, and clarity of purpose. Active imagination also strengthens your relationship with the symbolic world, deepening your ability to perceive the meaning behind your daily experiences. Rather than living reactively, you become a co-creator of your inner life, capable of transforming tension into inspiration, fear into guidance, and resistance into power. Over time, this practice builds an inner bridge to the self, the larger, wiser center of your being, allowing you to draw on an inexhaustible well of creativity and resilience. In this way, active imagination is not mere fantasy but a disciplined act of inner exploration, one that transforms self-sabotage into a springboard for individuation and authentic living. Guilt is one of the most powerful emotional forces in the psyche, and when left unexamined it can become a silent architect of self-sabotage. It thrives in the shadows, whispering that you are undeserving, incapable, or forever indebted to past mistakes. Yet guilt in its deeper essence is not your enemy. It is a messenger pointing to areas where your values, choices, and actions are misaligned. If you linger in guilt without transforming it, you remain stuck, repeating patterns of self-punishment and avoidance. But if you learn to work with guilt consciously, you can transmute it into responsibility, a state of empowerment and agency. Responsibility differs from guilt because it is forward-looking rather than backward-binding. Where guilt keeps you frozen in shame, responsibility asks, what can I do now? How can I act differently today? This shift moves you out of self-condemnation and into creative ownership of your life. It allows you to acknowledge mistakes, learn from them, and make amends when necessary without being imprisoned by them. In Jungian terms, this is a movement from unconscious identification with a shadow aspect, the guilty self, toward integration and individuation as the responsible self. To begin this transformation, Notice the internal narrative that guilt uses to hold you in place. Instead of automatically accepting it, ask, what truth might be hidden here? What action can restore alignment with my values? Sometimes the action is external, apologizing, changing a behavior, or repairing a relationship. Other times the action is internal, offering yourself forgiveness, updating a self-image, or letting go of a belief that no longer serves you. Each time you choose responsibility over guilt, you rewire your psyche to expect growth rather than punishment. Over time, this practice liberates enormous amounts of psychic energy. The weight of guilt drains vitality, fosters procrastination, and feeds self-sabotage. Responsibility, by contrast, fuels momentum, courage, and self-respect. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop of positive action and self-trust. As you live more responsibly, you naturally grow into greater integrity, and the shadow of guilt diminishes because its message has been honored. Ultimately, transforming guilt into responsibility is an act of inner leadership. You claim authorship of your own story and step out of the victim role into the role of conscious creator. In doing so, you discover that your past does not define you. Your present choices do. So much of our exhaustion, confusion, and self-sabotage arises because we live from the periphery of ourselves. From borrowed identities, external expectations, and the shifting winds of approval or criticism. The periphery is where the persona dominates, where you play roles designed to be accepted rather than to be authentic. When you live from the periphery, your energy is fragmented. You are constantly adjusting, defending, and performing. This creates fertile ground for self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotage, because your actions are rooted in what others think rather than in your own deepest truth. To live from the center is to anchor yourself in the core of your being. The self in Jungian terms. The unchanging, integrating center that holds all parts of you without judgment. This is not a fixed point, but a living source of presence, awareness, and authenticity. When you orient to this center, you are no longer driven primarily by fear, validation, or comparison. Instead, your choices arise from a quiet authority within, a sense of rightness that does not require external confirmation. Shifting from the periphery to the center is both a practice and a discipline. It begins by noticing where in your life you feel scattered, anxious, or driven by obligation. These sensations point to places where you are living from the periphery. You then invite yourself back to your center. Through breath, reflection, meditation, journaling, or simply pausing before making a decision. Ask yourself, if I were acting from my deepest truth right now, what would I choose? Over time, this question becomes a compass guiding you back home to yourself. As you live more consistently from the center, self-sabotaging patterns lose their hold because they depend on your disconnection to thrive. External pressures and inherited narratives still exist, but they no longer dominate your inner world. You develop a grounded presence that allows you to engage with life's challenges from a place of wholeness rather than fragmentation. This does not mean you withdraw from others or reject society. It means you meet the world from a position of inner strength and authenticity rather than compliance and fear. Ultimately, living from the center creates a life of greater ease, creativity, and coherence. You become less reactive and more responsive, less caught in cycles of guilt or approval and more attuned to your own guiding principles. The center is where your power resides, where your values align with your actions, and where your energy flows freely toward what truly matters. From here, you not only overcome self-limiting beliefs but also embody a steadiness that radiates outward, inspiring others to find their own center as well. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, of bringing into conscious awareness the full spectrum of your psyche. Light and shadow, strengths and vulnerabilities, hopes and fears, and integrating them into a coherent whole. It is not simply self-improvement or personal branding. It is the unfolding of your authentic nature, a deep remembering of your own center. In Jungian thought, individuation is the ultimate goal of psychological development, and when you embrace it, you move beyond the narrow confines of self-limiting beliefs and the cycles of self-sabotage that once defined you. This path begins with recognition, noticing the many masks you wear, the inherited narratives you have absorbed, the ways you have fragmented yourself to survive or to be accepted. Individuation invites you to gather all these parts and welcome them home. Each time you integrate a forgotten aspect of yourself, you reclaim energy, vitality, and freedom. The process may feel disruptive at first. Old identities dissolve, Outdated beliefs crumble, but this dismantling clears the way for a deeper, more authentic structure to emerge. As you progress, you experience a profound shift from external authority to internal authority. Instead of seeking validation, you act from an inner sense of rightness. Instead of suppressing uncomfortable emotions, you learn to listen to them as signals from your unconscious. Instead of sabotaging your own efforts, you begin to trust your own rhythm, timing, and wisdom. This is liberation not in the sense of escaping life's difficulties, but in the sense of no longer being unconsciously driven by them. Individuation also expands your relationship with others. When you are no longer trapped in self-limiting roles, you can meet people as they are, without projection or manipulation. You stop reenacting old patterns and begin creating relationships grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. This freedom ripples outward, allowing you to participate in the collective not as a passive recipient of its myths but as an active co-creator of new possibilities. Ultimately, individuation is an act of spiritual courage. It requires patience, honesty, and the willingness to stand alone with your own truth. Yet as you persevere, you find that the self, the deeper organizing principle of your being, guides and sustains you. Individuation is liberation because it frees you from living someone else's life, from being imprisoned by unconscious patterns, and from endlessly looping through self-sabotage. It grants you the ability to act from your whole, integrated self, and to live a life that feels genuinely yours. This is the highest freedom Jung envisioned, not the absence of constraints, but the presence of inner alignment so strong that external circumstances cannot shake it. In embracing individuation, you step into the full radiance of your individuality and, paradoxically, into deeper connection with the whole of humanity. To browse episodes about getting unstuck is to browse episodes of your own soul's journey. Each insight you encounter is a lantern held up to the labyrinth of your unconscious. Step into it. Trust your process. The self knows the way.